back on Gertie Road, back again, a Monday mood. Well, it's a Monday mood, and as we all know, it hasn't been a fun day, has it really? All over England, this is happening that you can see on the screen. And I thought, rightly or wrongly, I'd put in my tuppence halfpenny worth for what it's worth. Well, I'm going to have a go anyway. So, and as you know, I don't do politics, but people say to me, stop saying you don't do politics. Everybody does politics. You have to do politics, don't you? So I thought what I'd do is, firstly, take a look at my lookalikey, what's his name? Mike Graham from Talk TV. Let's see, because I haven't heard it myself, so we're going to hear it both together. You've probably watched it. I haven't, just come in from work. So let's plunge in, guys. Come on, troops, one and all. Let's hold hands and jump in together. Yay!
What is going on and how is this ever going to be stopped? Because at the moment, it doesn't look like the police have got the wherewithal to do it. Priti Patel, you just heard on the news there, is also now calling for the recall of Parliament, as has Nigel Farage. We'll bring you more on that as it comes. There's a code.
Oh dear. So we've got to call all the MPs back to Parliament. That does remind me of 2011, that does, because they all had to come back from holidays abroad, didn't they? And it was the devil's own job to get the, at that time, Mayor of London back from Canada. He was on a, what do you call it, with a motorhome across Canada. Yes, and his name was Boris of Johnson. And, he was very reluctant to come back. Eventually, he did come back, though, and, we all know what happened there. But we've now got this. Now, I'm quite aware that a lot of this is being blamed, placed, parcelled out and put squarely at the feet of a certain Mr. Yaxley Lennon, who seems to be on holiday somewhere abroad and having a fine old time along with all the politicians. While we here at the coalface, and this is going on, and these guys are tooled up, look at them. Look at what they're wearing, those guys. I mean, you know, I'm in my own home and it's like drippingly hot. So I feel really sad and... it's sad that they've got to wear all this protection clobber in like 80 degrees or 90 degrees and probably like 100 once you've got all that stuff on, degrees of heat. And you can see to the right, there seems to be some sort of fire. Now this has been happening, where is it? Underlined tension being ignored, migrant hotel set fire to in Tamworth and Rotherham. Okay, so it's also been going on in Bristol and loads of other places across the country. It does seem to be more up north and northwest than actually down here in the south, but I'm reliably being told by the media talking heads of the more what you might call on the right media that it's going to be coming to all the small towns soon. Okay, so we've got that to look forward to. Now, where I live, we've got what one might call a migrant hotel, and obviously I'm of advanced years, and I see a lot of young guys, and they just look like children to me. They just look like young, lost people. And they're all somebody's son, aren't they, really, at the end of the day? And for whatever reason, they are here. Now, I've done this before, and so I'm going to run through it again. If you actually look and go into it, what's going on, these people are told that Britain is paved with gold or whatever. When you come here, all the women, there's so more women than men, and we need all the men over here. This is what they're told in their villages and towns, where the traffickers go to, what would you say, to sort of groom, I suppose, groom these guys into thinking, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let's go up there to France. Let's get ourselves on a boat and come over here and take what is in fact a... quite a life-threatening expedition, really, when you think of it. I wouldn't come over the Straits of Dover, you know, in a little dinghy. Have you seen any of the big old ships that are going by, the big container? I mean, they're huge. You see the big ferries, you could get about 8 ferries that will make one of those container ships. I've passed them in the Dover Straits, coming up. They're usually coming up from, like, China, crossing the Dover Straits and going up to Rotterdam, where they offload, and they are huge. It's a very dangerous expedition to be doing. You get caught in the, whatever it is that sailors talk about in the sea. You know, when the ship goes by and you get the sea thingy-bobbing. You know what I mean, don't you? You can tell I am not at all seaworthy, or see anything, to be fair. But yeah, it's dangerous. So, and then they come over here and they're put into hotels and they're given money and this, that, and the other. And then conversely, you've got our people and you've got the fact that there's lots of young men, predominantly young men, with no stake in society whatsoever. There's just as many women, but women seem to have, and young girls seem to have, for the very virtue of being young girls, and obviously girls are capable of having children, that there is more provisions if you are at that end of society for a young girl. It's inappropriate for a young girl to be on the street. It's inappropriate. I'm not saying there aren't young girls on the street, but it's inappropriate. They usually get housed a lot quicker than young men. And it's also inappropriate, obviously very inappropriate, for a young woman that's pregnant or with her children to be on the streets. So, conversely, society seems to have marginalised a lot of young men, especially Indigenous, white, working class guys, anywhere from, say, 16 up to about 30. Probably on more than 30, but I don't think, well, yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it's ones over 30 that are out rioting, but that's stupid because they are, because I've seen them. A lot of the likely subjects that we find on X and YouTube have been sticking their sticky beaks in for the clicks and shits, really, and because they're monetising to make money. And this is what I'm talking about here. This now has become a money maker. So you get lots of people that are monetised that are going to watch and report on the riots, that are giving their point of view, whether it's from the left or the right. And you've got the left's legacy media and the right legacy media that are also making a lot of shits and clicks and money out of the fact that they're reporting this. But at the sharp end of this is actual real human beings. It's young men that are marginalised from society, that have gone out and are causing mayhem. And you've got all the first responders and the emergency services that are out there and they're expected to protect whatever it is they're supposed to protect. And they're outnumbered, vastly outnumbered. And then conversely, you've got our ethnic brethren, whether they're Buddhists or Muslims or whatever they are, Sikhs, yeah, they're getting a bit itchy. They're getting as itchy as the Jews were when the Palestinians were, well, they weren't Palestinians, but the people kept, week in, week out, rallying and protesting for Gaza. And a lot of Jewish faith people were very unnerved by it. And conversely now, this is happening with the Muslim population. They're becoming increasingly unnerved, which you can't blame them. I mean, the vast majority of them were actually born here, so yeah, and have got stakes in society. You find also that with ethnic populations, they do seem to be more family orientated. I'm not, that's a sweeping generalisation, but generally we've seen the white indigenous working class and lower middle class population have seen increasingly over my time the breakdown of the extended family and indeed the nuclear family. Whereas our ethnic people, they don't do that. They stick together. Everyone's their auntie and uncle, which is the way it used to be with us. You know, if your mum had a friend, she was your auntie. If your dad had a friend, he was your uncle, you know. And I've noticed with the ethnics, everybody is their auntie and uncle. It's kind of like a term of respect, rather than just calling an elder person by their first name. They would call them auntie or uncle. And I think it is actually it's a sort of misunderstanding between all of us. Maybe we all need to get together and actually understand what's going on. I'm a Catholic, so I actually do go to church, and the church is usually full of 90% of females and a sort of 10% of males in the congregation. And equally, the priesthood is obviously all in Catholic faith men. So, but conversely, when you go to a mosque, it's 90% of men that go to a mosque and probably 10% of women, you know. They're a very patriarchal religion, whereas Christianity is I would say, a very maternal religion. It's all about peace, unity, love, respect, turn the other cheek, blah, de blah. The meek shall inherit the earth. So you've got a clash of these sort of two identities. And in the middle of that, you've got the media and the legacy media and social media that are making a lot of money out of ratcheting this up. And I have noticed it because it's not Mike Graham and it's not all these talking heads that are going to have to go to court. It's the working class lads that are going to go to court. Starmer Karma, he was last week, wasn't he, letting out 44,000 people that are in prison because they haven't got enough room in prison or something. But now, suddenly, Vutu, by a miracle, yeah, they've got so many places in the prisons that they're going to put basically the whole population of young, indigenous, working class men in prison if they've been to these bleeding riots. It's a shoot show, isn't it, really, when you think of it? Maybe we should all realise that the idea is to get everybody distrusting everybody else, to divide people, not only by religion, by gender, and also by, obviously, politics, and, yeah, and by many other factions as well, the haves and the have-nots. So now we've got groups of ethnic minority guys that are getting tooled up. And this doesn't bode very well, does it? It's just absolutely ridiculous. It's ratcheted up to such a height. Maybe we all need a little bit of understanding, but I think the other idea is all the time that we're blaming each other and looking, I mean, not talking about me or you guys, but what's going on generally. All the time everybody is blaming each other. You're not actually blaming the people whose actual fault it is, if you get me, capiche. So, and the last thing they want is for us all to... do you remember in the First World War the stories about on Christmas Day, they used to get out of the trenches and play football? And the Germans used to talk to the English guys because they were just working class Germans that were just in the trenches. And the English were just working class English guys that are in the trenches. And they'd gone to war in September thinking they were going to be home by Christmas. Or was it June they went to war in the First World War? Oh, it was September, Second World War, wasn't it? So yeah, whatever. They were all going to war. They were going to be home by Christmas. It was a done deal. So anyway, this particular Christmas, they all sang Silent Night. They got out of their trenches and they played football in the middle of no man's land. And they swapped cigarettes and they showed each other photographs of their loved ones and their girlfriends and their sweethearts. And then an order came down from the War Department in Whitehall that was never to occur again. That was a one-off time. It was not going to happen ever again. You were not going to parley with the NMA, especially on Christmas Day. So, yeah, it's about dividing people and keeping people divided, isn't it? I mean, perish the thought that we actually start talking to working class ethnic people and finding out how they feel about stuff. Yeah, we've got to beware of wolves that are dressed up like sheep, my darlings. So let's go.
Meeting going on currently at the moment as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number. You send us a voice note or call us as well. You can text us on 87222. Tweet us at Talk TV. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on.
Yes, well, let's not. Shut up.
There's an impression of two-tier.
I mean, I've been around. Yes, two-tier. Yes, we've all heard about the two-tier policing. Now, listen. Okay, I'm going to make myself really, really unpopular here. Okay, but when you think of it, and I'm just going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm trying to be pragmatic. The Palestinian protests, I wasn't actually supportive of. I was quite concerned about people in London feeling very unsafe because of their faith, and very outnumbered by the large protests that were calling for an intifada, and I won't repeat the words they were saying, because we all know what they were. But you've got to remember that by and large, and I'm talking by and large, and again I'm generalising because I do know Muslims that do drink alcohol, but it isn't a really accepted thing in their religion, okay, to drink alcohol. So the police go to their protests with that in mind. They know that they're going to be sane and sober and full of testosterone and fired up with religion, okay? So that's why they police them in a slightly different way to the way they police, say, us, okay, the white, indigenous, so-called working class, and other classes as well, whatever. I mean, what is class anyway? What is even that about? Okay, I always think there's only two classes, well, there's three probably. There's the elite, and there's the media class and the political class, and then after that there is no classes nowadays, but we can all beg to differ. And I think that is why when we have protests, I mean, Wetherspoons opens about 8 o'clock in the morning, they're all in there getting pissed up. And then they go raging around the streets. And so, of course, they are going to police that differently. Am I seeing it wrong? I would just say that might be why they... Because, again, these coppers, how can you reason with someone that's blind, bleeding drunk? That's just one person that's blind drunk. Say if you've got a few hundred, or perish the thought, a few thousand, that are off their bleeding barnets and chucking things around and setting fire to things. It's a different ball game you're playing, okay? And I'm sure if Muslim people presented pissed up and high as kites out of their minds and behaving in the way that the white indigenous were, I'm sure they'd be forced again to have the shields and the helmets and the batons and everything. And the reason it is policed differently, is it that it's two-tier policing? Am I wrong? Maybe it is. Maybe there is an element of that. And maybe as our ethnic brethren have grown and gone through the echelons of the police service and are now got up to whatever, being in control of the police service or in high positions, not all of them, but some of them are in high positions in the police force, maybe that is something they take into consideration, that they do know that their guys, as I say, are full of testosterone, because you marry basically who your parents decide you're going to marry, and you're not supposed to be having any unky-punky, are you, outside of marriage? I'm not saying they don't, because they do, we all know they do, okay? But generally, I've always found they're always fired up about something, aren't they? Because they are straight and sober and sane. And the only thing coursing around their bodies is a lot of testosterone, a lot of those guys. We could talk about Buddhists. Buddhists are probably exactly the same, except they're chilled out because, I don't know, whatever, that's their religion, isn't it? So you don't really find Buddhists very much raging around the place. Mind you, we have had that in Burma, haven't we, where all the monks went crazy. So they just took too much and all started going bonkers, didn't they? And they'd had enough, and all that went on. Was it in Burma? I think it was in Burma, somewhere like that anyway. And the monks that wear the orange outfits, sheets or whatever it is they wear, saris, yeah, they had a little tear up, didn't they? Because again, they were all sane, sober, prime in the youth and prime of their lives, yeah, with nothing but testosterone raging around their systems. And I think this might be where we're all being led astray. And of course, social media and the legacy media don't care. They're not going to point that out because they're making a lot of bleeding. Well, you can imagine what they're making, can't you, darlings? You really can. So let's have a look. What's going on now?
Policing. She added that she would not feel safe in some of the areas targeted
No.
by rioters
No.
over the weekend. Well, of course, a lot of people don't feel safe in Britain, in all parts of Britain, for all sorts of...
I can actually tell by some of the coppers, even from the back, you can tell they're ladies, they're women, because that's about the equality as well, that women are so equal to the police. I mean, we see that women are equal in sports now, apparently. I watched a young woman get absolutely battered by a bloke the other day in the Olympics. I think we all did. That's the price we pay of equality. But conversely, talking about equality, I have seen some male cheerleaders. If you go on TikTok, you see, is it Vanilla Funk? And guys like that on TikTok, go and check them out. We've all seen women cheerleaders, haven't we? We've seen them all, and the drum people, they walk along and twirl and everything in carnivals. Well, no, the pleasant thing is you've got men doing it. You've got young males that are cheerleaders. It's marvellous. That's total equality. Women can be on the front line with police, women can serve on the front line in the army, and conversely, men can be blooming cheerleaders if they want to be. And very nice to watch it is too, I might say, VooTubers. But, yeah, we need to actually be a bit more pragmatic, stand back and actually look at what we're being presented and then question why we're being presented in this way. Is it that, again, the white, indigenous, working class, predominantly men, are just being used as cannon fodder yet again to bring in yet more restrictions, maybe on social media, and to give back the power to the legacy media that they've been dying to do, which was going around the houses on it. But obviously that's where Harry and Meghan have hitched their wagon to this legacy media, disinformation, misinformation online, blah, blah, blah. Obviously with them it's for a different reason. It's because online they don't want people talking about the Marvelicious, do they? Or the Barry Barrington. No, not unless you're talking about her like she's the Madonna. I mean the Madonna, not me Donna, Mad Donna, not her. The Madonna or Mother Teresa. You're not really allowed to talk about her, are you? So is this what's going on? Is it yet another way of putting restrictions on social media to elevate back and to give control back to the legacy media? And of course, the legacy media are in cahoots with the politicians. I don't know how many politicians have actually either got a background in media or a family that work in media or vice versa. You very often see politicians then just become media heads. I mean, take for instance Rees-Mogg. He wasn't he something to do with the head of the House of Commons or something or other that no one cares? The leader of the House of Commons for the Conservative Party lost his seat. Oh, he's back on GB News now, isn't he? Do you get me? So they're kind of interchangeable, political and media class. And I think they sort of seep and weep into the aristocracy and the elite classes. It's kind of like a flow and flux between political media, elite and aristocracy and that sort of area, upper middle class. And then the rest of us are just, well, we're fodder, aren't we? So, should we be a bit more pragmatic? Should we cut the police some slack? Because they're only being told to do, especially the PCs on the beat, they haven't got any power. They're just following their orders of what they're told to do, aren't they? I bet you a lot of them don't really care. They don't really care if you're left, right, or in between. They probably just want to go home and have dinner and kick their boots off and put their feet up and have a rest and, you know what I mean? Play with their kids. They don't need all this garbage. Can you imagine going to work and having to face this every day? And especially in the heat. And look at them. Where I am at the moment, you're just in T-shirts and shorts. It's absolutely baking, and even that's too much to wear. And look at these guys. And ladies, because those two over from the far left, so the second and third in are women. You can just tell from behind they're women and the way they walk. Awful. They've probably got kids at home. They've got mums. They've got boyfriends, husbands, grannies, aunties, uncles. It's bad. It's bad. And everybody's been put against each other, if you know what I mean. So we need to actually stand back, remain calm, count to 10, and maybe go and shake hands with our Muslim friends, because we've all got them. They're lovely people. Not all of them, because not all British are lovely. In fact, I damn well know that a lot of English are right bleeding a-holes and mental. So we don't have the monopoly on virtue, do we, us British? We really don't. We really don't. And I think you can't really make a salient point if you've been getting pissed up on Stella Actor Twat all day, can you? You can't. You can't. And I've been around up north, it's a bleeding mess as well. And that it's a mess because of politicians. Because of the lack of funding, because the funds have been just seeping out of Britain into their offshore bank accounts and all their hooky quangos and one thing and another. Start looking at that. Start looking at that. Start looking at all the money that's paid to Serco, it's the main company, and other smaller companies that are attached to Serco, to house these people that come over on the boat. And the minute those boats stop, well, the money stops for Serco, doesn't it? Makes sense, doesn't it? So I've often wondered where they get those brand new boats from and those brand new life jackets. They always seem to turn up in nice clothes with iPhones and decent trainers. These are questions that we should all be actually looking at and talking about, maybe at home. Do you know what I mean? Not on the internet. I mean, who'd be as daft to talk about it on the internet anyway? You know what I mean? But maybe we should all just calm down, count to 10, ask where our sons and daughters are, and get them in and say, stop it. Mind you, to be honest. Yeah, I reserve judgment on that. I don't think I'll say too much. But we're not doing anybody any favours. I mean, if you going and smashing up your own house. Oh, I'm cross with the politicians. I'm just going to smash my gaff up. Doesn't make sense, does it? It's absolutely ridiculous. And it just makes it worse. Nothing makes it better. It reminds me of a scene out of Quadrophenia, actually, where he's friends with the rocker, Ray Winston. Phil Daniels is friends with the rocker, Ray Winston. And they went to school together, and they're on different opposing teams in Quadrophenia, because obviously Ray Winston is a rocker, and Phil Daniels was, what's his name, Jimmy, wasn't it? Jimmy in the film. And Jimmy was a mod. But they remembered they went to school and they were all right with each other. They met each other at the local bathhouse, because in those days you used to go and have to pay to have a bath, my darlings. And they got on. I think they went and had a cup of tea afterwards. Everything was fine. And then later on that night or the next night, they went out. He was with his gang of mods and they found a rocker or a couple of rockers, chased the rockers down, started to give them a hiding. As he turned his head round, he noticed that the rocker they were battering was his mate, Ray Winston. And rather than stand up and say, listen, guys, I know this chap, stop beating him up. They did him bad. They did him really bad. Right, Jimmy got on his bike and rode off, didn't he? He couldn't confront his mates and say, can you stop doing this to my friend? We went to school together. Do you see what I mean? And I think a lot of these people need to do that as well, really. You need to just stop, because I've heard that now our ethnic brethren are also getting tooled up. When they get tooled up, they get tooled up. They don't just like set fire to a wheelie bin or something, you know. So, yes, let's go.
Reasons, and that's part of the reason why they're worried
Oh.
about the two-tier
Oh, dear.
policing. Let's talk to Ralph Schulhammer.
Yeah, but is it two-tier, darling? Couldn't you like use your intelligence to kind of talk this down? It's boiling in Britain. A lot of people haven't got much money. They haven't got much hope. They haven't really got a stake in society. Okay, and that goes for probably both sides of the barricade. And wouldn't it be more intelligent to talk it down rather than talk it up? That's all I'm saying. Or maybe be Oh, sorry to leave you like that.
Find out what he makes of it all, Ralph.
Right, that's better. Yeah, to be a bit pragmatic and sort of say, listen, why don't we just like get talking to one another? That would be a much better thing to do. Especially when most of us have been to school with people that are Jewish, people that are Muslim, people that are Buddhists. You know, lots of Christians, reborn Christians and Baptists. And I remember in my day, it was the Protestants didn't like the Catholics because of Northern Ireland. I can remember being in church and our Catholic church football team, was it the under 11, age 11, under 11s were playing the church over the road, who was under 11 but Protestant, and our Catholic priest said, make sure you give them a good hiding. And we were kids. I mean, I didn't, it was boys. But I can remember sitting in church and thinking, it's not really the thing you should be saying. So it's about dividing people and making teams and making two sides rather than trying to unite people. And obviously, I think that people are invested in keeping their side, i.e. in this case was the Catholic priest, are the ones that are likely to spout off that rhetoric because they want to keep control and power over their side. When really you should have said, make sure you shake their hands, chaps, at the end. You know, make sure you play well and you're a good sportsman. So, oh well, I'll give up.
Very good morning to you.
Mike, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. I mean, this is about as bad as it gets, really. I've read a really interesting piece.
Oh, but he's so sincere, isn't he, old Mike? This is as bad as it gets. And he's thinking about his next holiday abroad on the overtime he's getting off this.
Today, don't know whether
Yes?
you've had a chance to read it.
Go
but
on.
It's all about how we've been sort of misled for so long on the subject of, you know, multiculturalism, on the subject of, you know, ethnic conflict. It's written by a guy called Aris Roussinos, who I've never come across before. But he's written it for Unheard, and he talks about how it was the Blair Brown government that kind of changed Britain, you know, for what many people think is for the worst, when they tried to introduce, you know, a specifically multi-ethnic society, largely derived from the era's brief enthusiasm for globalisation.
Right.
And over the past 2 decades, Britishness has been constructed around little more than superficial.
Lady there, see lady? You can tell that's a lady policeman, police lady. Can't be a policeman, but police person. So, we've got that to contend with, haven't we? There's a lot of that about. And they don't tend to take people from the army. Some of these policemen are quite chunky, but not in a good way. Because obviously they save the big meaty ones that go to the gym. They're usually the ones that they use for more high-powered jobs. Like, you usually see them as armed police. You don't really see chunkies working in that high sort of echelons of the police, do you? So maybe there should be a bit of that going on, because the one over here on the far right does look like he's been to McDonald's far too much, you know? He looks like it could be me dragged up in a police uniform, doesn't it? But you know what I'm saying? I'm not being rude, but I'm just being rude. And you also get that with the protesters on both sides. You see people on both sides that really shouldn't be raging around because their blood pressure's going to go out through the bleeding roof. I saw a guy yesterday, one of the protests, he went to have a right old go. He was off his mind, probably drunk out of his, probably been down spoons all day. And he went to the front. They're all throwing bricks at the police. This is how bleeding senseless they are. And this guy thought, I'm going to go and give the police a piece of my bleeding mind, I am. That's what I'm going to do. So he's probably looked to me in his 40s, probably late 40s, early 50s. And he went straight up to the police to give him a piece of them, his mind. Yes, he did. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to give you what for, pissed up. And of course, the moron, they were throwing bricks at the police. So who got a brick? He got a brick in the back of the head, he got a brick to his face, and he got a brick in the bleeding crutch as well. And you're like, are you mental? Do you know what I mean? What are you even doing there, Grandad? Go home, you fool. Oh, dearie me, I probably said too much. Go on.
Official national symbolism and the desire to avoid any kind of ethnic conflict.
Yeah.
And I think he's onto something, don't you?
I think they want ethnic conflict. I think that's what I've said. I think they want that because it would give them increased powers. I mean, what about if they could bring in a curfew? And I know they've had that demon Tony Blair on, and he wants digital ID. They're going to bring in on the internet that they want people to use their names and not usernames, which I do actually bloody well agree with. But finding a person's username is doable, darlings. Yes, it is. Yes, that's a thing. They think they're hiding behind their usernames, but they're not, darlings. No, they're not. I wonder whether they had riots in Nottingham last night, did they? I don't know, but I'm sure there will be a riot pretty soon in Nottingham. So anyway, yeah, unrest seems to be going on everywhere. And I feel sorry for the police because they're constantly firefighting. It's one little thing after another. At any rate, wasn't this all kicked off initially over a tragedy that I'm not going to go into, but it was absolute tragedy. Now, I have actually lost a child in my life, and after I lost my child, who was killed, I would hate to think that the whole of Britain was up in arms and fighting. I'm bereaved. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel. I couldn't think. I couldn't function. I was just in shock. Total and utter shock. I couldn't do anything. It was like being mental. When I look back on that period of my life, I was mental. I had some sort of like breakdown. I wasn't here. I wasn't present, if you know what I mean. And to think what agony those parents are going through, and the parents' parents, and the extended family, and all the people that knows the bereaved people, and the victims of that terrible, tragic crime, are now faced with seeing all this going up all around the country. It's kind of disrespectful, mate. It's kind of disrespectful. They all need to go home and just chillax out, really. Maybe go to the gym and get their energy out in a different way. And maybe, like Winston Churchill said, jaw is always better than war. And I think we're being led, like blind fools, into a trap. Because, as I say, once they put Tony Blair